Hello, everyone. Welcome to Refiguring the Future, a NetGain event. My name is Chance Williams. I'm a program officer at the Open Society Foundations.
And good evening. My name is Eric Sears. I'm a senior program officer at the MacArthur Foundation. So it's wonderful to have all of you here today. Today's event is being sponsored by the NetGain Partnership, which is a collaboration involving the MacArthur Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Knight Foundation, Mozilla, and this year, Omidyar Network. And collectively, we have a common interest in seeking to strengthen digital society and advance the public interest. Currently, the NetGain Partnership is focused on a topic that we broadly frame as the quantified society. And this is really trying to capture the idea that machines and artificial intelligence in particular are increasingly making consequential decisions that affect individuals and society across a range of domains.
So at this event, we're going to highlight the important role of artists in critically examining the social implications of artificial intelligence and related technologies, and explore how the arts can help us to shape a future that is more just, equitable, and inclusive. In fact, the images that you've just seen are a manifestation of that. Trevor Paglen's work, Behold These Glorious Times, which helps to show us how AI systems see the world. Earlier today, the NetGain Partnership hosted a workshop that brought together around 70 artists, curators, designers, researchers, advocates, and funders to spark a new or a renewed sense of agency, creativity, and imagination in refiguring the future. And we want to continue that conversation here. This evening, you're going to hear from leading researchers, artists, designers, NetGain leaders, and we invite you all to join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag NetGain. And be sure to stay for the reception afterwards and join us for some beverages and casual conversation. We are very excited to be hosting this event here at the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago, an institution that is so aligned with our values and what we're trying to bring forward with this event. And we're very excited to get started with the museum's Director of Convergent Strategy, Claire Root, who's going to come to the stage to say a few words. Claire.
Hi, welcome to the Museum of Contemporary Art. We are so pleased to be hosting this event with the partners of NetGain. I think Chance is right. We feel incredibly aligned with the values that you have brought today and are continuing to bring through this evening's public sessions. There aren't a lot of things that our entire curatorial and programs department agree on. Fortunately, we all bring very different perspectives to the work that we do here at the museum. But one of them is this. Art that addresses technological and social change is the most important art of our time. This program correctly puts artists at the center of conversations about technological and social change. There are three reasons that we need artists at the center of these conversations. Artists are futurists, artists are self-critical, and artists are innovators. First, artists are futurists. They are always finding ways to peek around the next corner. Upstairs right now, we are showing one of those futurists, Howardina Pindell. In 1975, she peeked around the corner with her glittery, pastel, perfumed canvases. She peeked around the corner of a very macho minimalism. And in 1979, with her video, Free, White, and 21, she helped viewers to peek around the corner and understand the experience of living every day with racism. Artists are futurists. Second, artists are self-reflective. Some futurists might be satisfied with just predicting the future. Artists are only satisfied after they have questioned the very assumptions on which those predictions stand. Artists are taught from day one to question. We can all learn from artists how to pick apart the tools and mechanisms through which we think, whether it's public discussion or our algorithms. Third, artists are the best innovators in the interest of people and society. This has to do with the 1-2 punch of being both futurists and self-critical. Artists have always been experimenting, pushing, and testing, and as we innovate, they are always interrogating the ethics of our innovation. Toward what end? To what side effect? For whom? How? Why? On June 23, the Museum of Contemporary Art Chicago will open I Was Raised on the Internet, a show about how the internet has changed the way we see the world and the way that we see ourselves. This is a direct outpouring of our shared belief that the most significant art of our time critically examines technological and social change. As the first generation of digital natives comes of age, the questions we will talk about today are urgent. I'm looking forward to continuing to hear the discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. So it's now my privilege to welcome on stage Dr. Kate Crawford. She is a leading professor on the topics we're discussing here tonight. She spent the last decade studying the social impacts of different kinds of technical systems. She is a distinguished research professor at New York University and a principal researcher at Microsoft Research. Most recently, she co-founded the AI Now Institute at NYU, a university-based institute that is, it's the first of its kind, actually, that's dedicated to understanding the social and political impacts of artificial intelligence. Kate?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eric, for that amazing welcome. I'd like to say it's such an honor to be here, and I want to particularly thank everybody who's part of the NetGain coalition of partners. I think what you're doing is incredibly important. But a particular thank you to Eric, to Chance, and to Mimi for bringing us together and really pushing this program forward. I have some images to show you tonight, so hopefully we'll have those in just a minute for you. Tonight, I want to talk about images particularly. What is at stake in an image, and how AI systems are currently using images to be a force in our contemporary culture. Right now, autonomous systems are classifying, labeling, and giving identities to people. Images are one of the ways that AI systems have learned to distinguish objects like a license plate or a cat. But this can produce some significantly unintended social effects that you might see up here when AI systems try to make sense of the social world. Just ask 6% black Michael Jackson up here. But first, I want to take you back to November 1972. This is Lena. She is the Playboy centerfold of that month. But she is no ordinary pinup. Lena became what is known as a standard test image. She's been used to optimize everything from color processing to image recognition algorithms. I think of her as the mother of machine vision, or if you like, she's Eve in the garden of AI. Lena is now the single most used image in computer science history. And very few people know that she is actually a frame of a pornographic centerfold. What is interesting about this is it makes me think it's like a type of original sin in the technical field. That there is this type of objectification of humans, and women in particular, but there's also this pretense that somehow images and the context where they came from don't matter. Well, I'd like to suggest tonight that I think they do matter, and that now we face a situation where a host of unquestioned assumptions about race, gender, and sexuality are now becoming the foundation of artificial intelligence. But first, what does this term artificial intelligence even mean? I mean, it has so much hype around it, it feels like it's everywhere and all around us, but actually the field has been around since 1956, and its definition has changed with every decade. But when people talk about AI now, they generally are referring to a constellation of techniques in which machine learning is currently the most popular. Now, these techniques have become a lot more powerful because of three things. The explosion of powerful computational infrastructure at the planetary scale. Secondly, improved algorithms. But most importantly, massive troves of data, which have been harvested primarily by a handful of tech companies. But AI is much more than just technical approaches. It's also social practices. It's about who designs these systems and who decides what problems are being prioritized and how humans are going to be classified. For some reason, Mark is flashing in and out, so we could be at a congressional hearing right now. Ultimately, why I like to think about the people behind AI systems is because they are also responsible for powerfully shaping the systems we have in the world. And I hate to tell you, but the AI field is very demographically skewed, to put it politely. The top 7 AI companies in the world are overwhelmingly dominated by male engineers from very similar socioeconomic and education backgrounds. This also affects the kinds of problems that AI is being applied to and which populations are not well served. So you've likely seen lots of articles recently about bias in AI. And in some ways, I think this term is too small, and it certainly shouldn't surprise us, because machine learning systems function by discriminating between us, by tracking how your purchases are different from my purchases, the particularities of your geolocation patterns, your social network, and then making predictions about how to influence you, whether that's trying to sell you things, try to modulate your health insurance prices, or if you're Cambridge Analytica, trying to change how you vote. All of these systems already exist, and they are trained on data that is informing them on how to make discriminations. But very often that input data is extremely skewed. For example, if you do an image search for CEO, and who knows, maybe we'll have the images back up at any minute now, I'm going to describe to you what you're going to get. You will see ta-da! You will see a host of white dudes in suits. And of course, these images have all been collected from the web. And now AI systems are recognizing them and presenting them back to us. But this can create a very powerful and sometimes concerning feedback loop. But AI systems aren't just cataloging images and showing them to us. They're also interpreting them and tagging them with particular attributes. This is an image that comes from the YOLO 9000 training set. And you can see that Barack Obama is being recognized as a leader. Michelle Obama is being recognized as an American. Okay. What kind of leadership here is being recognized and why? In fact, when you work with these sets, you'll see how few women are actually ever tagged as leaders. And now these systems are being used across the US in hiring. This company, HireVue, is already using AI and emotion detection in job interviews. And they're effectively tracking thousands of micro movements in the faces of job applicants as they answer questions, and then listening to their voice and the words that they use, and then mapping those patterns to the top leaders in their companies, deciding whether to hire them. You can see the potential problems here. But this is already being used by companies like Goldman Sachs and Unilever. What are the deep cultural assumptions that these systems are being built on? And who might this not work well for? So to understand how this is all happening, we need to ask, how does an AI learn to see? And what types of structural biases might be shaping that vision? This is a standard training data set which is used in machine vision. It's called labeled faces in the wild. Training sets like these are how AI systems learn to see, if you will. It's basically, in some cases, thousands or even millions of images that are made from human data, scraped from places like YouTube or from Flickr or from news sites. This is how we are training contemporary AI systems to see. It's through the lens of our own past. Now, Labeled Faces in the Wild has around 13,000 images, but it has some very notable skews, as people in this room have researched and shown. It's around 78% male and 84% white. So they're the people for whom a system trained on this will work best for. But have a guess who the most represented face is. Just have a thought, who might it be? It's kind of a hard one to pick. It's George W. Bush. He is actually by far and away the most represented, and this doesn't really make any sense until you hear that labeled Faces in the Wild was built on an earlier training set, Faces in the Wild, which was created by scraping images from Yahoo News in 2002. So it's no wonder W is everywhere. The president, of course, gets a disproportionate amount of news attention. And for me, this is a great reminder of how our data sets are reflecting our culture, but also our structures of power. Let's look at another benchmark training set. This is one that just got released very recently, just at the end of last year, by Google. It's called AVA. It's made of hundreds of movie clips in which human actions are being extracted and labeled. And they said that they chose movies because they thought that represented the most lifelike activity. Okay. See what you think. Let's have a look how lifelike it is. If you go through the data set, you will notice a couple of somewhat concerning patterns. For instance, this is the category playing with kids. And you'll notice it's all women. Apparently men don't play with kids. But don't worry, guys. If you're worried that you're not represented, all we have to do is to go to the category called kicking a person. All dudes, all men. And that is ultimately how an AI system is going to understand the differences between what men and women do through mainstream cinema. En masse, these cultural lessons may not be the ones that are going to serve us the best. And I think it makes human culture and gender roles much more rigidly fixed rather than evolving over time. We need to consider ultimately what is at stake when we classify people in AI, not simply thinking about narrow bias or technical errors, but thinking about this as a repeating cultural practice that has consequences. This was actually a point made right back in 1751 by Diderot and d'Alembert when they were preparing what they saw as the complete encyclopedia of human knowledge. They had 3 classifications: memory, reason, and imagination. And we started thinking, what would it look like if you built one of these for AI today? So this is something that we're doing at the AI Now Institute just to keep track of all of these training data sets. And it looks like this. You can see where training sets are being made to categorize objects, people, places, and ideas. And if I zoom you in, you'll see how these sets build on the sets that came before them. So we have labeled Faces in the Wild. Before that, we have Faces in the Wild. You can go all the way back to some of the earliest facial recognition sets like Ferret, which was made by the Department of Defense in the 1990s. Right now, we are experiencing the largest classificatory experiment that the world has ever seen. AI systems are categorizing everything from human actions, human feelings, poses, millions of objects and places and natural phenomena. But the classifications we choose can have lasting and sometimes harmful effects. Back in the 17th century, Thomas Urquhart proposed that there were 11 genders. We had genders for a god, a goddess, a woman, a man, an inanimate object, a beast, etc. Fast forward to 2013, and Facebook says there are 2 genders, men and women. By 2014, the same year that India's Supreme Court officially recognized transgender people and said that it is the right of every human being to choose their gender, Facebook quickly retired its binary gender classification and introduced this one, which has 71 choices in a drop-down menu. Now, we may see this as an improvement. It is certainly trying to be maximally inclusive. But what I want to suggest is that these design decisions between 2 genders, 71 genders, or having no gender field at all, might be a good idea, is still incredibly important as a political choice. Like race, attempting to settle the classifications of gender one way or the other can have the effect of locking in a worldview, rendering some people visible and some people invisible. We've had to learn this lesson of the power of classification so many times in the 20th century. This image comes from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which back in 1952 listed homosexuality as a serious mental illness. This took over 30 years of activism before it was finally dropped, with devastating consequences for people who are identified this way. But now history is repeating itself in AI. Last year, Michael Kaczynski, whose work you may have heard of, it's deeply influenced Cambridge Analytica, released a new paper, colloquially known as the AI Gaydar paper. Now, they scraped thousands of images from dating sites and from Facebook to then apply them under a deep neural network to detect facial features that would allow you to tell if somebody was gay or not, just from their photo. Now, this caused, as it should, enormous controversy. I think there are clear methodological and ethical problems with this paper, particularly when we consider that homosexuality is still criminalized in 78 countries, some of which apply the death penalty. But here's an even deeper problem at the level of epistemology. These kinds of papers, I think, confuse relational categories like gender or sexuality with something naturalized and fixed and concrete, like, say, labeling something as a cup or a chair. And of course, this might be giving you flashbacks to concepts like phrenology, where you could somehow tell somebody's true identity from their face and their head shape. In the 19th century, phrenologists believed that homosexuals could be detected with a bump on the back of their head. And I think you'll see from this illustration, I love this particular, they say this with absolute certainty. So there you go. This, for me, is a moment where I think we have to sound an alarm about when AI systems are seeking to phrenologize humans, seeking to fix and label categories that are fluid and complex, and particularly when they make these claims with absolute certainty, but that's another thing. So now we're in a situation where AI systems are touching our lives everywhere, from education to criminal justice. And given that these systems are very hard to see, how do we come to understand them better? How do we hold them to account? How do we start to understand and critically engage with this underworld of images driving AI? Yeah, apparently he's happy, just so you know. That whole scene, we've been misinterpreting it this whole time. Now, part of the problem here is that computer science as a discipline does not have a tradition of thinking about the work done by images. But this is where other disciplines are so important. Artists, for example, are rarely thought of as an important group in AI, but in fact, they are the ones most deeply trained in thinking about the cultural work that images do. Because images are not always what they seem. Magritte once said that his paintings are mysteries that conceal nothing. They just force us to ask a simple question. What does this mean? This simple act of questioning the meaning and work of an image and of whatever that sound is, which is fantastic, is not just an artistic provocation, but it's also a political one. So I personally have been very inspired by the artists who are contending with the bleeding technical edge of AI systems to explore how they work and to show them to us in a new light, to ask, what does this mean? What are the cultural and political stakes here in these images? And why do I think artists can do this? Well, I worked on a research project with a colleague, Luke Stark, a few years ago, where we started interviewing artists from around the world who were working with large-scale data and machine learning. And we asked, really, what were they trying to produce with these tools? And again, artists would say that this was simply trying to figure out how we show to people these sorts of decisions that are happening in the background all the time. And artists were thinking very deeply about the ethics of algorithmic systems. And that taught me to think myself more radically about who should be included in the conversations about AI. Normally it's just computer scientists at the table, but we need a much wider lens, and we need to turn to those who look outside of the narrow boxes of technical systems. So that is one of the reasons that I'm excited to announce that we have launched a culture program within the AI Now Institute to invite artists who are making critical interventions to work side by side with us as researchers. And I'm delighted that our first inaugural artist fellows are here in the room tonight, Trevor Paglin and Heather Dewey-Hagborg. Amazing. Their work deeply inspires me to think of the many ways that we can make real interventions into opaque technical systems. Because I think this is a crucial time to start holding these systems to account, because they're already being baked into everything from predictive policing to teacher assessment. And above all, this is what we want to avoid. We want to try and avoid the moment where the future of artificial intelligence isn't artificially stupid. And let's be clear, I'm not suggesting that artists can reverse the power concentration in the AI industry or even solve the lack of accountability in algorithmic systems, but they can help us to ask a bigger question. For example, right now the technical expansion of AI is considered somehow inevitable. And all we can do is just tweak the edges, be it trying to technically clean up bias or make better privacy settings or write ethics codes. But all of these approaches are partial and incomplete, I would suggest. What if we tried to turn this arrow in the other direction, to ask instead, what kind of world do we want? And how can we design technologies that serve that vision rather than driving it? I think that's the much bigger question that we can ask ourselves. And by including artists and activists and philosophers and social scientists into the room and into the field of AI, I think we can move towards a much more just and equitable answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Okay, so next we'd like to bring up a group of curators and artists from Refresh, a new collaborative platform that is supported through NetGain that's focused on creating a more inclusive vision of our cultural relationship to science and technology through art. So please help me welcome Refresh co-founder and co-curator Heather Dewey-Hagborg, Refresh artist Lauren McCarthy, and Refresh co-curator Dorothy Santos.
Oops. Here it is. Great. It's wonderful to be here. So Dorothy and I are going to start things off, and then Lauren's going to come in and give you all a nice long talk about her work. I can start, actually, anyway.
Yeah.
So in 2015, I started digging into an archive of a particularly prestigious media art festival that some of you might have heard of called Ars Electronica. And I was curious about who was being represented in particularly the top prize winners of this very well-known festival that gives out $20,000 prizes. And what I found after digging into the archive, so 3 decades of prize winners, was that it was men. And not that that was entirely surprising, but so this led to the creation of a social media campaign that me and a group of amazing women worked on called Kiss My Arse. So, and we got some good traction on social media, and so ran this campaign in 2015. In 2016, we wrote a piece in The Guardian, and that kind of relaunched the campaign, and then we got even more attention. Meanwhile, Ars Electronica basically ignored the whole thing, or actually they posted a blog post of men talking about women, which was also not really addressing the problem. So after that, we thought, what we really need to do is something proactive. So instead of just calling attention to the problem, we want to point towards all of the amazing artists that they're missing.
Mm-hmm. So in a parallel universe, really the West Coast, I was frustrated with expectations that I would perform my queer Filipina identity as someone covering art and technology. And my primary concern really was to just write about and curate work about really just artists and within their artistic practices who critiqued Western medicine and used scientific methodologies such as DNA phenotyping, gene editing, and looking at precision medicine. And I came across the hashtag #KissMyArs and Heather's work that I was writing about at the time, and I just knew that I found something really special that I needed to build this collaboration and this connection with Heather.
So Refresh was born. And so what is Refresh? So Refresh is a collaborative and politically engaged platform at the intersection of art, science, and technology, established in 2016. As a collective, we begin with inclusion as a starting point for pursuing sustainable artistic and curatorial practices.
Refresh breaks down systemic cultural and economic oppression and offers validation and visibility to populations that have been historically marginalized, including women, transgender and cisgender, people of color, LGBTQI, and disabled artists from around the globe.
And we're doing this not to check some kind of diversity check mark. We're doing this because we really believe that this is where the most new and exciting ideas are happening. Because the status quo is failing us, and we desperately need new ideas. So who is Refresh? So Refresh includes Salome Acedo, who's in the audience, Brooklyn-based artist and researcher whose practice celebrates dissensus and multivocality.
Dr. Heather Dewey-Hagborg, a transdisciplinary artist and educator who is interested in art as research and critical practice.
Kathy High, interdisciplinary artist working in the intersection of technology, science, speculative fiction, and art.
Lynn Hirschman-Leeson, an artist and filmmaker who has received international acclaim for her art and filmmaking for over the past 5 decades.
Tiare Raibo, a Hawaiian-American artist and curator and founder of Babe Lab, a gallery which is focused on innovation and radical inclusivity, showcasing underrepresented groups in technology and media.
Dr. Camilla Murk-Brusvik, a fellow at the School of Art History at the University of St. Andrews, UK, where she is researching the history and visual culture of menstruation.
Dorothy Santos, Filipino-American writer, editor, curator, and educator whose research interests include biotechnology, digital, and computational media.
And finally, Addie Wagenknecht. Her work explores the tension between expression and technology, blending conceptual art with digital hacking and sculpture. Yes, my favorite topic. My favorite topic. So diversity is one thing, inclusion is far more challenging. And in the conversations that Heather and I have had, along with the rest of the Refresh team, I kind of think of inclusion, and the reason why this is difficult, and you'll see why in my example that I provide, is diversity is everyone's invited to the party. Inclusion, however, is when you're invited to the party, and okay, I'm just gonna put it out there, in my immigrant Filipino family, pork is a leafy green, and for years I was a vegetarian. So what does that mean? Inclusion means that someone who invited me should know what my needs, what my wants are, but how will I feel included? It's one thing to be invited, to have a seat at the table. It's another thing to know your guest.
So our first project is an exhibition and symposium that we're calling Refiguring the Future. So it starts from the premise that our ideas of the future are tired and need refreshing. Refiguring is inspired by one of our participating artists, Morrishan Aliyari's term. Refiguring is a way of repurposing. So in her work, she takes tools of digital colonialism, like 3D scanners and 3D printers, and uses them as probes and generative mechanisms for thinking about and creating new futures, reimaginings, and re-renderings of history. So to refigure is to hack, or to take apart problematic structures and to assemble this debris into something other.
We're not merely stating and restating problems, but we are pulling from different realms of thought and practices such as punk, biohacking, do-it-yourself culture, with the aims of taking things apart and building something less oppressive, fumbling towards a progressive vision and liberatory future, showing spaces of possibility. But we cannot refigure the future without friends.
Oops. So we're very excited to announce, actually all of this is new, so we're basically announcing everything today, but in particular, announcing here first that we're teaming up with Eyebeam, the legendary, amazing Brooklyn-based organization that's been supporting artists working with technology in political ways for 2 decades. And Eyebeam is such a natural partner because they're an art organization that really cares deeply about the future of art, about the definition of culture, and technology's effects on humans and the human experience.
And
Roddy and Sally Schwed from Roddy Schrock and Sally Schwed from Eyebeam are here in the audience.
yay! And together we have just brought on a 2-year curatorial fellow, Lola Martinez. She's in the audience, Cuban-American curator and researcher whose practice focuses on technology and tropicality. So in essence, this individual is helping us shepherd and refresh the future and refigure the future and bringing this into the future.
The future of refiguring the future.
Yes! Sorry, excited.
Oops. And now we're incredibly excited also to make our first public announcement that after 2 years of fundraising and very hard work, we also have a partner venue and some approximate dates as well. So we're going to be working with Hunter College Art Galleries in New York, in Manhattan, to feature this inaugural exhibition. And
Guess we can move on to the artist.
And incredibly importantly, this wouldn't be possible without the generous support of the NetGain Partnership, for which we're extremely grateful. And so look for this in the early part of 2019, late Jan, early February, we should be launching the exhibition.
Okay.
So enough about all of that. Let's talk about our amazing artists.
Yes, there are 15 confirmed artists, but we wanted to introduce and give you a sense of a few of them. We can't give away everything, you know,
Exactly.
Just can't.
Gotta keep some
but
surprises.
we'll talk about a few. So first, Sonia Rockport was a Bay Area-based artist, and the reason why we're including Sonia Rockport's work is because we wanted an intergenerational look at art, science, and technology. So when Sonia was alive, she was an interdisciplinary artist combining art, science, and technology in her work. Extremely highly collaborative. I'm convinced, and Heather and I talked about this, that Sonia was actually probably one of the first new media digital artists that was engaging in social practice before it actually became a discipline. Always inquisitive and enthusiastic, right up until her passing. And I actually had a 3-hour studio visit with Sonia months before she passed. She was doing an artist residency, and she was 91 years old. So in this work that you see here, Objects on My Dresser, Rockport applied the principles of scientific visualization to the analysis of personal psychological space, drawing on 29 objects found on her dresser, and it was created over a period of 5 years between 1979 and 1983. And you could say this is one of the first works of data visualization.
Claire Pentecost, who's one of our local Chicago-based artists, is a research-based artist, incredibly meticulous research-based artist, writer, and activist, whose work over the last 3 decades has tackled the biopolitics of food, agriculture, bioengineering, and most recently, the Anthropocene. Claire's writing, in particular, on the idea of the public amateur, who she says is one who concedes to learn in public, eschewing the performance of expertise and instead highlighting the endless tentativity of knowledge construction. This idea of the public amateur is a major inspiration for Refresh and for Refiguring the Future. So in the work you see here, called Proposal for a New American Agriculture, Claire has composted an American flag.
Misha Cardenas, also in the crowd, is an artist and scholar focused on different ways technology mediates the human body and experience. So here we see her project Pregnancy, which is a hybrid poetry bio-art project that presents a vision of trans-Latina reproductive futures. This project in particular, and Misha's work, just overall the breadth of her work, puts women of color, feminism in dialogue with bio-art through DIY biotech and poetry describing trans of color experience.
Lee Blaylock, who's another one of our Chicago-based artists, and she says so many amazing things. This is a quote taken from her bio page. If my practice has one goal, it's to express from crown to toenail all that is censored during the performance of daily life. I just love that so much. So Lee's work deals with limits and restrictions of the body and thinking outside the concept of the body as we know it. She imagines other worlds, other bodies, other systems, and other rules beyond what we tend to think of as the human. Lee's work involves performance, painting, drawing, programming, working with systems, order, rules, and she really sees them as having liberatory potential. The image that you see here is from a piece called Capsule Performances, where she built a 4-foot cube in her studio in which she would perform, using this 4-foot cube as a canvas for arranging technologized, captured images of her body.
Mary Magic is an artist and biohacker working at the intersection of biotechnology, cultural discourse, and civil disobedience. Her work queers the tradition of tactical media, harnessing technological tools and turning them into tools for fighting oppression. Her project here is Housewives Making Drugs, involved the creation of DIY protocols for making estrogen at home in your kitchen, which I'm doing when I get home, and democratizing this political hormone while also asking questions of safety, medicalization, and bioethics.
And last but not least, Zach Blass, who also has an incredibly meticulous research-based practice and uses it as a way of radically questioning the underlying structures of contemporary technology. Contra-internet, his work confronts the transformation of the internet into an instrument of oppression and capitalism. Zach utilizes queer and feminist methods to speculate on internet futures and network alternatives. The centerpiece of the contra-internet kind of constellation of work is Jubilee 2033, which you see a picture of here, a queer science fiction film installation that follows Ayn Rand and Alan Greenspan as they go on an acid trip to a dystopian future-present Silicon Valley. Really recommend you check out that piece if you haven't seen it. But most important for us really is Zach's hopeful approach, a way of really embodying our wish to refigure the future and not just to critique it. So on that note, we want to leave you with an excerpt of Zach's contra-internet inversion practice number 3, modeling paranodal space.
I hear a new world calling me. How can I tell what's in store for me? I hear a new world calling me.
So we want to see and we want to hear that new world. And you can learn more about us. Refreshart.tech, that's our website.
Yep.
And thank you all. And now,
Thank you.
Lauren, take it away.
One second. Cool. Thank you so much for everything to be here. I'm so honored. I'll just jump right into it. So my art practice really starts from my own social anxiety in almost every situation. And so I started out, this is a really early work, but I started out trying to think about what are the things that in particular I do bad compared to everyone else, like smiling, and how could I solve this problem? And so I started hacking together this little hat that would detect if I was smiling, and if I stopped smiling, it would stab me in the back of the head until I started smiling again. Yeah, anyway, so it was part of a series of devices, like an anti-daydreaming device that was detecting if I was talking to someone, it would vibrate violently around the neck if I stopped paying attention, or a body contact training suit that would detect if I'd gone too long without making some like normal human body contact, and I'd have to reach out to people and touch them in order to talk to them. And I use this DIY aesthetic to suggest that anyone could make these devices to help themselves fit in. But also in here was this question, what is fitting in? What are these optimal behaviors we're trying to achieve? Joanne McNeil drew attention to the emotional labor required in all our interactions and relationships, especially expected of women. In her emotional labor browser extension, you can write your messages tersely as you like, and then click a button, and all the positive emotional extras will be added in for you to save you the work. Or Kelly Dobson's scream body allows you to contain a scream in a public place, if it's maybe not appropriate. For later release, somewhere more appropriate. So these these tools make us laugh, but I think we're reacting to this underlying truth that we often want these things. And then on the other hand, what is this fitting in? What are these normal behaviors that we're trying to achieve? And what are the things we do to try and get there? I'm really inspired by the work of Sarah Hendren, and this is a project with Caitlin Lynch, Engineering at Home, where Sarah thinks a lot about this question of what is normal and how do we expand that. So in this project, she was documenting interactions with a woman named Cindy, who after suffering a catastrophic heart attack and amputations involving all 4 limbs, began hacking and building what she needed out of household items, adapting her environment. The website points to these new ways of understanding who can engineer or hack, what counts as engineering, and then more importantly, what is this normal space, and can we kind of blow the walls off of it? So thinking about this, I didn't really solve all my problems with the hat, and I thought maybe humans would be better than an algorithm at kind of following me and guiding my behavior. And so I wondered if I could crowdsource my interactions, or specifically my failing dating life. So I used a system called Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is a website that allows you to post small jobs for small amounts of money and get people to do tasks for you. Things that, usually it's things that people are really good at, but humans are not so good at, like look at this image and tag it, transcribe this audio, etc. And so in my case, well, I'll just play this video and I might talk over a little bit, but it sort of explains the project. So during this month of dates with people I met on OkCupid, I set up my phone to stream myself on the date to the web, and then I paid people through this website to watch and decide what I should do or say next. And then I would get these messages, text messages, and I had to perform them immediately. So this was sort of the log that I kept, and then I iterated the interface to figure out what mechanism of feedback was the most helpful. These are some of the things they said. Sometimes they would give their observations instead of directions. So I had stumbled upon the way to live, but I was really confused still about now the boundaries of my own kind of self-concept, or what it meant for others to have this kind of control over me. And wondering, is this dishonest, or is this just the way I've decided to live my life in, the year 2013? Or does it become more like this collective group of people actually merging into one? And with all of this, it's sort of about prototyping the future. So this was right around when Google Glass came out. And everyone was really concerned with the idea that people would be wearing cameras. But I thought, we're already carrying cameras. What's really concerning to me is the idea of people consuming information without anyone knowing constantly. So I make these projects as sort of like fast forwards, trying to imagine what is this near future and what might it be like. And as surveillance and big data becomes increasingly ubiquitous, we're forced to negotiate new relationships with it. A common reaction is fear, but when it's all around us, how do we still go on with our lives? So one thing that really stood out to me with this experience was just being in it, and that was the one part that I couldn't communicate to everyone else. When I was doing it, it was really hacky. Sometimes the system would break, and I'd run to the bathroom and kind of log into the server and try to fix the code and come back out and be just putting on some lipstick. So I wanted to make something where other people could try this, and so what I made was an app that anyone could use that was a little bit less about the kind of discrete secretive thing and more about just imagining a future where you use this. And this is part of the trailer for it.
Crowdpilot is an app that lets you crowdsource your conversations. Bring along your friends or invite strangers to help you in any situation, like a date, a meeting, a family gathering, or just let them figure out what's going on. Your Crowdpilots listen in and give you live suggestions of what to do or say. Relax, take control, take a chance, get Crowdpilot.
Yeah, so it was an app. You could download it from the App Store, and the response was overwhelmingly upset, outraged. The end of the world, we should all give up now, just kill me. Is this an art project? I can't tell, it looks too nice to be an art project. Ban startups, ban ideas, Fox News had their take.
Well, if you can't beat them, join them. Thanks to the new phone app Crowd Pilot, the NSA is no longer the only snooping game in town. Now you are. To tech guru Cassie Slane on how it all works. What are we talking about here?
Well, I wish I had this app back in my dating days.
It's weird. It's just very, very weird.
This is actually tempting the evil right there. No, but this is actually a great idea because what it's doing is it's making another form of what we're already using social media in its best sense.
Wait a minute.
They get it sometimes. And so this is a little bit silly and outrageous, but the point for me is looking at the internet as a means for distribution and dissemination. And so the sort of viral video is then something that gets people to see this thing, and maybe they're outraged at first, but they start to have conversations. And then more importantly, they have to decide, will I use it? And how, right? You don't get to just have a reaction. It's actually a possibility to download this app. And so you see people, you can actually drop into these sessions. These were some of the ones that right around the launch of, help me convince my roommate to move out, or help me settle this argument with my boyfriend. And amidst rapid technological development and social discourse, it's so easy to dismiss something new with a knee-jerk reaction of like or dislike. But the innovations and the changes we're seeing aren't black and white. So to move forward, I think we have to engage with these tensions and questions. The goal of this app was to create a space for people to do that, to engage, to question, and to decide for themselves how they wanted to live in the world. Well, I became really obsessed with this idea of just watching people. And this next trailer kind of intros the next project.
Wake up, I get dressed, I go out, I do things. I read a magazine and I find out about people. Why do I know about their lives? Somebody should be knowing about mine. I want to share things with people, but I don't want to have to talk to people and tell them what I'm doing. I think it'd be great for them to see what I'm doing. It takes time to build relationships. It takes time to touch base with people. So I don't want another relationship. I just want to have a relationship with somebody that I never have to talk to, that can just follow me and see me having a relationship with myself. If I knew somebody was following me, watching my life, it might add some more fun to my life. I like to play. Doing something for having fun for myself would at the same time create a new experience for somebody else. I think I'm a pretty positive person, and I think that the things I do are with consideration of other people. Who knows what somebody wants to see, but if I bring out the best self of myself, maybe that will spark something in them.
So Follower is a service that provides a real-life follower for a day. In order to be followed, you go to a website and answer 2 questions. Why do you want to be followed, and why should someone follow you? If you're selected, you're sent an app, and when you open it, it just says waiting for a follower. And then one day, you don't know what will happen, but you wake up and you're notified your follower is now following you. And the follower stays just out of sight, but within your consciousness. And the follower is me. So I'm the blue dot running down the street after the red marker there in San Francisco for this one, and physically following the person. And then at the end of the day, you get one photo of yourself taken somewhere during that day with a notification you're no longer being followed. We're living in this weird, anxious time where on one hand, surveillance is pervasive and out of control. And on the other hand, we have this intense desire to be seen, to share every intimate detail of our lives. There's sites you can go to buy online followers. $10 can get you 1,000. You can find out how real your followers are. But could a real-life follower provide something more meaningful or satisfying? How do we perform when we know or think someone's watching? And does it change when we're talking about physical space or one individual person versus a crowd of attention-divided people online? And Follower offers surveillance as a luxury experience. This is an app for people that not only have nothing to hide, but need to be seen. Embedded in this offer, who are the people that don't have the privilege of hiding, of not being seen, just because of who they are or what they look like? And then with the gig economy, it seems sometimes we're willing to try any app that promises us something convenient, novel, or useful. But I think putting an interface between people is risky. It weakens your connection to the person on the other end. I really like this hashtag life after chores. Like, the chores disappeared, but the chores didn't disappear, just the people, because you don't have to talk to them anymore. You just use an app to control them and have them come and hold your pit on the beach until you show up at just the right time. And I'm really inspired by, this practice of following in general. I see that beeping, but I think I have more time still, right? That was what I was told, at least. But maybe I'll just skip these, because maybe not. Anyway, but I have to talk about Heather's project, right? So I'm interested in this idea of finding a small piece of someone and sort of expanding on that. So Heather was walking around the streets in Brooklyn, picking up pieces of chewed gum or a cigarette butt, and extracting from that enough DNA to construct a portrait of what that person might have looked like. And I think that's this idea that you get some small piece of someone, and then immediately your mind goes to, but also maybe the technology goes to, expanding on that a lot. Ultimately, I want to create different sorts of interactions and relationships than we have normally. I'm wondering, as much as technology might separate us at times, could it also bring us together in new and interesting ways? I will skip these, but these are some of the final portraits of the people. And then finally, to close on this last project, I started thinking a lot about, rather than public space, the private space of the home. I was thinking about these smart devices that were being sold to outfit our homes with surveillance cameras, sensors, and automated control, offering us convenience at the cost of loss of privacy and control over our lives and homes. We're meant to think these are about utility, but the space they invade is personal.
They're relying on the Blitz too much.
Alexa, play My Girl.
Okay.
The home is the place where we're first socialized, first watched over, first cared for. How does it feel to have that space occupied and controlled by these AI devices? Programmed by probably a small homogeneous group of developers that may or may not share our social values. And then women, long seen as keeper of the home domain, as complicated as that idea is, are now further subjugated. Their control is undermined by the smart home assisting and shaping every activity. I'm interested in other ideas of what the smart home might be. I won't talk too much about these, but I wanted to show them. Lucy McRae's Fat Monk video, Noam Torn's Accessories for Lonely Men, and a chest hair twirler, a heavy breather, a plate thrower. You get the idea. We talked about Merry Magic already, and Krzysztof Wojcicko's Tijuana project, reimagining our relationship to architecture and the stories embedded in that. And so with all of this, I decided what I really wanted to do was try and become Amazon Alexa, a smart home intelligence for people in their own homes. And so the idea was that, again, you could go to a website, you could learn about the project, you could sign up, you'd record a video explaining why you wanted to get Lauren in your home. I would come and begin the performance by installing a series of custom designed network smart devices, including cameras, microphones, switches, door locks, faucets, and other devices. And then I would remotely watch over the person 24/7 and control all aspects of their home. I attempt to be better than an AI because I can understand them as a person and anticipate their needs. The relationship that emerges falls in the ambiguous space between human to machine and human to human. And so I'll close on this last video that shows some of the thoughts on what it might be like for one of the participants to get Lauren in their home.
Lauren, where are my car keys? Lauren knows that I like it a little bit cooler than Miriam does.
You know, I'm usually the one that does all these little extra things. So at first I was a little bit careful about asking her, and now it's like, how else can we live?
Lauren has recommended that I get a haircut every 3 weeks, and let me tell you, it's helped with my my self-esteem a lot. I am able to simply approach and carry on conversations with the opposite sex, where at one point or another that wasn't so easy. Lauren, we're out of toothpaste.
Lauren would know what I want, but then maybe it's not what I really want internally. But externally, she thinks that Lauren thinks that playing music or shutting down all my electronics is the best way for me to cope and winding down, when maybe it's not.
Lauren was actually able to help her manage her medication and take her medication on time, and everything actually got a lot better after that.
You have those friends who are kind of about you, like the friendship is about you. That's what Lauren is like. It's like a roommate, it's a friend, but we're always talking about me. It's always about me, whatever it is.
Because it's a real person, and Lauren is a real person, and Lauren's been through perhaps what I've been through.
And then I forget that she's around, even though she's kind of always around, or I assume she's always around. And then I'll remember she's there, and I wonder if my hair looks okay, and then I can check in.
Because I don't really like the idea of Lauren being in control. I like the idea of her being in support, but not in control.
On the one hand, I'm perfectly fine having Lauren around, and it's become very comfortable for me. But one might argue that at some point there's a side of ourselves that we want to keep private.
Every sort of data, all the output goes straight to Lauren, and that's where it ends.
To avoid any kind of explosion or any kind of anger, sadness, there's never a time I really have to ask for anything. It's like Lauren already knows what I'm feeling. Lauren feels what I'm feeling. So where you can focus on the more important things.
I'm not some automated system. I'm not pre-programmed. And like Alexa and Siri, they don't care about you. But with this, there's nothing artificial. These are people. And with each one, I'm watching and anticipating and trying to figure out what is it that they need. And it almost becomes sort of like a game. Like, sure, I can turn on the lights or run the faucet, but what is the thing that I could do that would bring a smile to their face or actually surprise them or just make them feel something? I think we just have to try things. We have to engage with these systems. We have to decide for ourselves how we want to feel, how we want to live in the world with them. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. That was terrific. It's now my pleasure to welcome on stage the leaders of the NetGain Challenge, along with Dr. Alondra Nelson. Dr. Nelson is president of the Social Science Research Council and professor of sociology at Columbia University. Her work bridges and operates at the intersection of technology, science, inequality, and race. So with that, I would like to welcome them now on stage.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here. Eric, thank you for that introduction. Delighted to be here this evening with this distinguished group of philanthropic leaders who are also pioneering in their commitment to helping us think as communities about emergent technology. So here with us this evening are Darren Walker, president of the Ford Foundation, Patrick Gaspard, president of Open Societies Foundation, Julia Stasch, president of the MacArthur Foundation, and Mitchell Baker, chairwoman and founder of Mozilla. So, as you will have heard from comments earlier this evening, several of us in the room spent the better part of today trying to think together about the social implications of artificial intelligence through the lens of the arts and of creative expression. And one of my takeaways, I guess, that I was left with, and I wanted to start by hearing what you made of the day and the conversation, and of course the incredible provocative words and ideas we heard and images this evening, was the sort of the toggle between being caught in a gilded cage. I mean, if algorithms are sort of rules and systems that give us directions about how to do things in the world, on the one hand, there's a kind of gilded cage, maybe a bit of a beauty to it. And on the other hand, we might just be facing sort of simply prisons, right? But either way, on either side, there's a kind of constraining force. On the one hand, there is incredible art offers for us as a way to think about emergent technologies, incredible hope and new narratives. But on the other hand, as Trevor Paglen reminded us this evening, some of these systems are, in his words, irredeemably undemocratic, right? And so there's this kind of very much Janus-faced or a sort of bittersweet moment that we're living in with regards to AI. And so I wanted to begin with you, Darren, and sort of get your thoughts on how you thought about our conversations today and this evening.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. So algorithms and AI is not new. It is an updated way of control. We've always had control in society. We have now simply, in this digital age, created a new way of control, a new way of defining power. And what I worry about is that we are simply, through AI, potentially going to simply replicate all of the discrimination, bias, prejudice, and power imbalance that we see in the analog world, now in the digital world. And so, as the leader of a social justice foundation, what I am concerned about is power and justice. And how will it be advanced or constrained by technology? And so for me, I think we have a responsibility to raise for the public through investments in what I call the 3 I's, in ideas, in institutions, in individuals, which is what we basically do. We foundations are basically financiers of many of the organizations and the people who we've heard from today. And that's our job. And so for me, our responsibility now is to ensure that we are resourcing the people who need to be engaging the public on these questions of justice, that we are investing in a new generation of institutions that currently, that haven't existed, and that we are fortifying them to exist for into the future. And that we're investing in ideas. Many of those ideas may or may not have long-term currency, but they will help to frame how the public understands this question of technology and justice. So that's how I see this.
Great, thanks. Patrick?
Wait, I don't get a different question? I have to answer.
No.
You know, I mean, Darren just nailed it.
I know, it's hard to follow. You can't disagree with Darren.
It's impossible to follow Darren, but it's even more impossible to follow Lauren. That was a remarkable presentation, and it really reminds me of something that the science fiction writer William Gibson said, Lauren, when he said that Earth is the alien planet now. And I really think that your presentation and the work of artists like you who are examining and interrogating what AI means in our lives really allows us to pause, to hit the freeze frame button in order to begin to question things that have gone unquestioned for far too long. When Kate was making her presentation, she talked about phrenology, and I have to tell you that as a black man in America, I feel as if I'm phrenologized in every single room I've ever walked into all of my life. But to pick up the thread of where Darren started, I think that now I'm phrenologized in a way that's completely unaccountable because it's not done in a way that we have any transparent read into, which is why this conference is so critically important. This is an urgent matter. This is something that's real and happening in our lives now. The future isn't stupid. The present is what's actually really insanely stupid. I'll lift up a quick anecdote, an example from in the realm of public policy in Indiana a few short years ago, when the state of Indiana made a decision around 2008, 2009 to figure out ways to streamline their welfare delivery system. And the governor of Indiana was harping on one instance where two co-workers in their system found a way to game things and steal $8,000 from the system. And so, of course, this meant that everything was broken. So over time, in Indiana, the legislature replaced 1,500 live human beings that were administering welfare benefits. Replaced them with online tools, applications, and a call center. And over the next 3 years after that, there were 1 million more denials of benefits in those 3 years. And that was a 54% increase from the 3 years prior. So people who have been on the margins, desperately poor, who look like my family, were being denied life-saving essential benefits because of the way that these algorithms have become profoundly unaccountable. The EU Commissioner for Competition, Verstager, said not too long ago that algorithms really need to be taken to law school, right? Because this is really not machine learning, it's machine teaching. And we are basically teaching these machines to make the same screwed up, dumb decisions that human beings have been making for some time now. So this confluence of data science and provocative art is exciting to be able to make an investment in right now.
That's great. So we'll go to Julia, but I wanted to ask that, right, you provide a really powerful example of the sort of damage that algorithms can do to people's lives. And I would then ask you to sort of what either can the arts or philanthropy do in that space, right? What's to be done about this Indiana example?
Well, I'd say this about philanthropy, and I think that the artists who've already been on stage have spoken with their example about the power of their intervention. Philanthropy is not as nimble and as inventive as artists are, but there is something that we can do. The companies that are producing these algorithms, that are benefiting from these algorithms, have a tremendous amount of power in the resources that they have and the access that they have to policymakers. And the work of philanthropy foundations like ours, with our modest investments, can tip the scales a bit in some of the resources, the access, and we can help lift up voices that have been marginalized in these kinds of debates. We know that it's mostly people who are well off, who are wealthy, who have the most access to technology, but it's the poorest people in society who are most implicated by the outcomes. And being able to lift up those voices in public policy debates is critical in our advocacy. At the end of the day, as Darren said, as Kate said earlier, this is ultimately and truly about power, and foundations can lift up the power of networks. There are examples in the US, in the EU, in sub-Saharan Africa that we can pull together, cobble together to push back against some of the worst abuses from these industries.
Thank you. So Julia, in our conversation earlier today, you brought up Mimi Onuhoa's phrase, algorithmic violence, as a way of sort of thinking about what might be some of the more pernicious implications of artificial intelligence. And you also talked a bit about how the work that some of the investments that you're making at MacArthur in the arts might be a sort of counterpoint to that. I wondered if you wanted to share some of that with this larger group.
So I'll do that in just a moment,
Sure.
but let me pick up a little bit on the notion of urgency. I have a hard time sort of reconciling the sort of tensions between the sort of increasing uncritical acceptance of systems and practices, and that juxtaposed to what feels like warp speed adoption of technologies and algorithms. And so I'm wondering, and this is not what you can say when you're a foundation president because you have to be optimistic at all times. But I'm wondering if we have enough time, if we actually have enough time to have the voices at the table that need to be there, if we have enough time to spark the interest of and plumb the, the insights from ethicists, if we actually have enough time to have an impact on the systems that are becoming so pervasive and embedded in our lives. And so I think that foundations need to do what you're saying, which is make sure that the only voices aren't the voice, the normative tech white male voices. But what I'm saying is that plus the fact that none of us read the terms of service, and we just go, I accept. And so even we who are savvy and understanding, are we complicating this by our own uncritical acceptance of the changes? And so I'm worried about running out of time. But I did raise this issue of, I think that we are, and I guess it's part of the same thing. Yeah. I don't think we're thinking urgently enough about the embedded flaws in the systems. I mean, we talk, almost, sort of flatly about, oh yes, there's bias, and oh yes, there are errors being built in. And so we say, oh yes, people aren't getting mortgages, or all the kinds of consequences that play out in their daily lives. But this doesn't feel like just a bad thing. It feels like a violent thing, and that's why I was so taken by that phrase, algorithmic violence. And so when there's violence, it seems to me that it requires a different response than the measured research response, or the yes, let's see if we can negotiate with the good guys in the inside of the corporate giants. It says, do we have strong enough advocacy demanding sort of accountability? Funny thing was, I was on a panel with Darren, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I think he said something about we have to hold these algorithms accountable, and I thought, what? I don't even understand that. Didn't people design them? And that was before I understood that people have a role, but then it's out of our hands in many ways. So I'm worried that the genie is a little bit too much out of the bottle.
Can I?
Please, Mitchell.
Maybe,
yes.
The question of whether we're out of time, I think we have to look at a long time frame. I think the answer is we are out of time for some generation of people right now. Like, that violence is occurring now, and more is likely to occur. And the question of, are we out of time to stop it before it happens because we were prescient enough to know what's coming? I think that's true. And so there is not only the work of understanding, there's the work of building building more representative development systems, understanding what's happening, building institutions, getting rid of the systems that we have today that are so biased, one by one, right? Like that's a path. So I don't mean to be even more critical, but this stuff is happening now, so we won't stop it before it's in our lives. And some portion of us, many more than others, are going to experience it. So I think the urgency is real, but that shouldn't stop us. Like, there's the person born today and the person born tomorrow and the person who's going to be denied next week and 6 months from now and a year from now. And so we have to make changes for the future. So I'm it's on us right now, and that should add to the urgency of building, and there'll be incremental fixes for a while. Here's a system, and someone has actually figured out exactly how biased it is, and then we figure out the right pressure point in the political and power system to somehow try and get it fixed. And so very incremental right now that needs to build into something that's more sustainable and more ubiquitous.
Can I just on this point say,
Please, Darren.
When I hear things and like, are we out of time? I mean, as a society, we have been out of time for a lot of people when it comes to justice. We were out of time 20 years ago on the war on drugs, when we were saying what the implications were going to be for Black and brown men in this country. We were out of time then. And so today we're asking once again, are we out of time? And the question is, the answer is no, we're not out of time. We lack the will. And so, Julie, one of the many reasons I admire you and what you're doing at MacArthur is you didn't even know what I was talking about 2 years ago.
True.
And you had no clue. But unlike most of us in foundation land, particularly big foundation land, you got on it because you understood on some level that for MacArthur's mission, these issues were important. And you got smart people on your staff like Eric and other people. You got your board on board, and you made a big commitment. Unfortunately, we in philanthropy often aren't able to respond with urgency because we are like every other privileged institution in our society. We have the privilege of moving at our own pace. And so if we are to internalize these questions around power and privilege, which implicates us, then we will work with more urgency on these issues. Because the reality is that for the privileged and the powerful, the outcomes, the implications for this conversation are not as dire as they always are. They're never as dire in our society as they are for those who are vulnerable and those who have historically, in our analog world, been left behind. And so the question is, how urgently are we working to ensure that in the digital world they're not left behind? And fortunately, artists who always are the ones who can save our society and who have always been the ones, when there's ever been a moment of social inflection, to call America out and to call the powerful and privileged out. Because the artists hold the mirror up and demand of us that we interrogate who we say we are with who we actually are. And they're doing that through this work, this intersection of art and technology today. And so that's why, for those of us who are investing, and there are not enough of us in philanthropy, we've got to figure out a way to broaden. Because if it's the same 5 foundations in NetGain that it was 5 years ago, 5 years from now, that urgency is not going to be met.
So I want to push on this point a little bit, but for all of you, about how you connect the dots, right? So Lauren, Heather, Dorothy showed us incredible works that sort of, for a moment, I think all of us were enwrapped and we were literally taken somewhere else. We were taken to different worlds, right? And so how do you take the power of that transformation and make it into social change? What is the role of the philanthropy and sort of connecting the dots in that transformation?
I don't want to be the only one to talk. I can say a lot about that. I'm going to let my brilliant colleagues.
I'll speak from our perspective because, and that perspective is trying to bridge philanthropy, technology, and product and consumer market, which is very complex, at that moment. But part of what connects the dots is the imagination and the ability to see something else. And so we see this in technology too, and in building technology, is that right now, everything is convenient. This is the problem with mass surveillance. Alexa's convenient. Our phones are convenient. We surveil ourselves. And we surveil ourselves in our own homes now. So convenience is like people just sort of expect it and are resigned and have given up. There is really no choice. And even if I opt out of Facebook and, the rest of the world is still surveilling me. So part of it is that you have the reflection and you have the idea that we experienced earlier tonight, and you can see a possibility. And humans are much better when they see and have internalized that something different and better is possible. And so we see that even in technologists, I do love technology. So, there is something about calling out in technologists as well the possibility of something different. And it's something like even as basic as a browser. Before we built it, everybody knew we were stupid. It was an IE world and it was a Windows world and, we were just stupid. But if you can take a possibility and make it real so people can see it, then behavior changes. And so I connect the dots by thinking that the prototyping and the the different worlds that we're into shows a possibility of what is and what could be different. And if you can, like a prototype, and if you can even get to a prototype of something that's different with your relationship to technology, then the possibilities multiply.
So I was just thinking about the role of artists and the sort of translational dynamic that an artist can create. I mean, we can fund research, and we can, and we can mount an information campaign about something to raise the awareness. But there's something about the sort of creative moment of interaction between an artist's work or an artist's performance and the people that experience that. Then they see it in a way that is meaningful to them. And so it seems to me that if we could actually acknowledge the role to a greater degree of different translators than we typically think of, if we were to actually say, we want every single young person to experience the perils or the concerns or the things related to technology, along with the opportunities of it, are we not acknowledging that there are different ways for those people to learn, and that one of the ones that we want to pay a lot of attention to is the one that gives them the immediate sense of understanding? Because then I think that if there's sort of a popular uprising of understanding or demand for accountability, that's an essential complement to a future that looks different.
And we have to...
I rarely cut off my big brother. I'm wary of that. But I think to go back to the premise of your question, I just want to be really clear in noting that philanthropy, foundations don't create social movements. What we can do, though, is help socialize the right set of questions that can inform movements and lift up a set of actors who can then make transformational change. The people who are pushing this technology into our lives are really driven by an efficiency paradigm, right? It's an efficiency paradigm. They're trying to figure out ways to make many decisions as quickly as possible. But an efficiency paradigm isn't necessarily the best thing for things like, social welfare and justice, because due process is a complicated thing, right? So in order to push back against that efficiency paradigm, we can help ask the right kinds of questions about how this technology is applied. For instance, in 2014, which now seems like a million years ago, there was an attorney general named Eric Holder, who actually had read the Constitution. And he released a study that demonstrated that algorithm risk assessment tools that were being used already in courts were profoundly flawed, and started asking a number of questions that then those of us in foundations picked up and disseminated and connected to the work of activists, grassroots activists on the ground, to artists, to other data scientists, and helped really convene conversations that spurred action and the right questions being asked in the halls of Congress. Fast forward now to 2018, brand new world, brave new universe, and we see the quick, rapid adaptation of that technology in ways that's really distorting outcomes in bail decisions. And we're doing this with technology that a recent study demonstrated that a random person picked off the street who's paid a dollar could make decisions that are much more accurate about predicting who's more likely to be a recidivist or not. So this is a dangerous time, dangerous set of tools being controlled by unaccountable and poorly informed and deeply biased actors. So in philanthropy, appreciating this, knowing something of the history, knowing that everything old is new again, that can just kind of drive a set of strategic decisions and investments that create linkages, networks that can help to motivate a pushback. But we can't be the primary progenitors of that. Just want to be careful about how we frame that.
Yeah. Darren, you were going to?
No, I would just say that, when I think about the things that we lack as a society today, the thing that we lack most is empathy. Basic, fundamental empathy as a society. Technology does nothing to contribute to our producing a more empathetic society and for us to be a more empathetic people. And at the end of the day, in order to have justice, a society must have empathy. And so we as philanthropy should be doing all we can to support those inputs that make us more empathetic, which is so much about the arts, and so much about artists and art making and arts institutions. And so why aren't we investing more in artists, arts institutions, art making? So I think we need to think about that more. And then within our own institutions, at the end of the day, our priorities, I mean, no matter what any big foundation says on their website, get the document that's not on our website, which is our annual budget and what we prioritize in terms of grant making. And that will tell you what our priorities are. And so the reality is that we aren't allocating enough resources within our own budgets, because it means that we have trade-offs, that we are saying that this is more important. I know this from my own experience in my own institution, which had a very modest investment in this space. And thanks to the good leadership of Jenny Toomey and educating me, because I was like you, I had no idea what net neutrality was until I met Jenny. But even though I was a Luddite, I understood on some level that the implications for justice, once I really came to know the implications of all of this technology. So you have to, within your own organization, say, okay, we may have to spend less on blank because this is more important. And we have to have a conviction about that. I'm asked all the time, why do you spend more money at the Ford Foundation on the arts and humanities than you do on jobs? That's a legitimate question, because jobs are really, really critical. One of the reasons is because more foundations actually think like that. And so I'm actually more interested in helping people experience beauty. Beauty. Yes. Because everybody deserves. And so as a matter of grant making, being comfortable with the conviction that the arts matter in a democracy, and that without beauty, people can't be sustained. And without creativity and free expression, a democracy will die. And so, as a foundation with an objective of promoting democracy and advancing democratic principles, the arts matter a whole lot. And so for me, it's not that what we do at Ford is the right way. It's not that, and I say this with all humility, but I also, coming back to where Julie, I think, rightly positioned the conversation around urgency. The urgency demands of us that we get out of our traditional boxes and that we upend our normative behavior that simply reinforces the status quo. The status quo is not going to get us out of this hole.
So it's such a profound point around empathy, because the examples of predictive policing, the examples of the sort of routinization of social services are examples also of an abstraction away from human connection, right? Again and again. And so, the sort of algorithmic society that's building up around us actually makes this actually more urgent and more acute, and ways that are worth thinking about. So I've been told we've got to wrap up. So one last sort of musing for the four of you would be around the future. So we're refiguring the future this evening. We've been refreshing the future this evening. We've been talking about the future this afternoon. What is the sort of future role for philanthropy? We know it has to be around these issues. It has to be more urgent. It has to be thinking outside of the box. It has to be more nimble. What would you offer as the future of for a philanthropic world that is going to sort of help us engage this important issue?
So I've got a couple of things to offer, and one is smallish, and the others maybe a little bit bigger. But the first is that if we're going to, if we're going to say others need to be working with our support or not on a better world, we need to say, how are we modeling that? We need to be authentic in our own practices. And so in this arena of technology, in this moment of the need to actually demonstrate to others, even in a small universe like philanthropy. But one of the things that the Ford Foundation just did was they published on their website all of the data that the Ford Foundation collects in plain English, in bullet point list, so that I know that if I sign up for a newsletter, you've got who I am, where I live, and if I filled out a little bit of a something, I'm a woman, I'm a, whatever else I am. But the point is that we now know how you collect data and also what you do with it. And so that's the simple sort of thing that if we could sort of say, okay, I'm going to do that, you should do that, and then we could start to demand that of others. So a little bit of modeling, I think, could make our engagement in this whole arena more authentic. So let me stop there, just let others envision the future. That's a tiny little piece.
It's a wonderful one.
It's hard to engage in the future here because Lauren has terrified me of the future.
Yes, exactly.
It feels like Shelley's monster has completely run amok here, and I'm not quite sure how we regain control. But I'm someone who is already a bit of a Luddite who fears these things. But I'll say this: I think it's important for philanthropy for all of us to actually consistently lift up examples of things that actually do work in spaces where there's an instinct towards resistance, to lift up a little bit of prescription. So since we're in Chicago, despite the fact that I am terrified of the explosive use of algorithms, I'll point out an example of algorithmic public policy that I think is useful and hopeful. Here in Chicago, they have a system called EmRelief, where you can go on a government website, put information about yourself, and it tells you by reading a set of algorithms what benefits you might be eligible for, and then it connects you to a flesh and blood human being who's able to actually walk you through a set of protocols to actually access those benefits. So being able to marry technology with some old school social service delivery, I think is a positive prescription here in Chicago that could get modeled and replicated elsewhere. So being able to point up things that are working even in spaces that cause us some trepidation is, I think, an important role that philanthropy has to play. I'm trying to believe that truth crushed to earth will rise again through Wi-Fi, so I'm going to hold on to that sense of optimism here.
So Mitchell, I can't help but ask you about the Mozilla Manifesto, which is is a document or a message that talks about what the future should be like. It really responds to the question that Kate posed to us about what is the world we want to create. Do you want to say something about that?
That'd be great. First, I was also going to add on the what should philanthropy do, a familiarity with technology is really important. Same with artists. Like the ability, like we saw today, to have artists who have facility with technology and aren't afraid of it and can do tech, that is new in the last few years and amazingly powerful. And so as philanthropy is comfortable in using tech, I think that will also be important. We, as builders of technology at Mozilla, are also trying to represent public asset, public benefit of the network, and how we can build it, and what you can imagine and think of and demand of ourselves and commit to ourselves as we build technology. And so we've had a manifesto for a decade or so, and recently in the last month or two, we have added to it to express more clearly what the human experience might be. So to actually, and this may seem obvious coming out of philanthropy or social justice or, the world of art, but for technologists, it's actually a big deal to say that, we actually think that like civil discourse and human dignity, that the internet and the technology we build should have as a goal a human experience of decency, rational thought and civil discourse, as well as inclusion. So it's new. I mean, it took me a while. I mean, I spent a long time on it to make sure that the Mozillians, like the global movement that is Mozilla, feel like this is us. And so now I hope to start connecting with other organizations and see, what are the tools that could draw us together as a louder and more effective voice, that technology, when it's built, should be both inclusive but also aiming at the human experience, not just the efficiency argument.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Shall we give the last word to the inimitable Darren Walker? Is there anything more you want to?
No, I mean, I think when you talk about philanthropy, Dr. King said something in 1968 to a group of philanthropists. He said that philanthropy is commendable, but it should not allow the philanthropists to ignore the very injustice that makes philanthropy necessary. Yes. And what he was saying to us is that at the core of philanthropy ought not to be charity, but justice. And if justice is at the core of your philanthropy, it will demand of you to do some things that will make you uncomfortable, because you are implicated in your philanthropy. And injustice is also implicated. And so I think that as we think about the future, I actually, while I too, like my brother Patrick, am terrified by some of the things that I see, I actually don't see a dystopian future. I think we have the capacity to have a better outcome this time. The question just is, do we have the will? And I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged in philanthropy because I see more foundations coming to the table, more of us recognizing that even in our own shops, we are woefully capacitated to take this on, and therefore looking for means, as we've done at Ford by hiring tech fellows, having a new complement of staff. But that has required us to get out of our normative patterns of hiring and talent recruitment and all of that, right? So if we're willing to get a little uncomfortable and outside of our traditional behaviors, I actually don't see a dystopian future at all. I'm very optimistic.
So Patrick wants to get in where the acceleration we've been talking about is happening to us on this stage, but please, please.
Well, Darren's bringing Dr. King into this, and Dr. King always said that dissent and dissatisfaction has to be creative dissent and creative dissatisfaction. So I just want to note that in order to bring the artists back as the exclamation point in this conversation, and I hope that their creative dissent and their creative dissatisfaction will be disruptive for those of us who are on stage as well, and that you'll question the sorts of commitments and investments that we make in this space. So it's just been absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Yeah. So just a final word, and I think that is, I think that we ought to challenge ourselves to say, is there anything that we're working on that could not benefit from greater engagement with artists?
And with technology, I think, taking Mitch's point.
Yes. Yeah. But I meant beyond that. If we're talking about climate or nuclear risk or journalism or anything, do we have the sufficient intellect, challenge, provocation? Do we have enough of that to make sure that our choices are better informed?
It's a wonderful way to end. Thank you for the vision that is the NetGain Partnership, and thank you for introducing.
All right. Hey, everyone. I hope you all have been enjoying yourselves as much as I have been watching from the wings. Thanks again to our amazing panel of NetGain leaders. You see this curtain closing here, which means we've got one last surprise in store for you all. We're almost ready to wrap up, but we've got a final performance to close out the evening. But before we bring those folks out, I just want to express our thanks to all of our speakers and everyone who has had a role in bringing this event to life. And we also want to thank all of you for joining us here this evening. It's been really great. After the event wraps up, like we mentioned earlier, we do have a reception that's happening on the second floor. As you exit the theater, there are going to be ushers there to direct you to the right place. And at the reception, we'll actually be featuring some art from folks at the Refresh Collective. The museum's galleries will be open, so you get to check out some exhibits and really explore, and we encourage you to do that. And the final portion of our program is going to be a performance by Mendi and Keith Obadike. Yes. They make art, music, and literature, and they've exhibited and performed at the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Museum of Modern Art, many others, and we're so glad they're with us. So they're going to perform a piece called Number Station, Furtive Movements. And it's a series of performances and sound installations that use numerical databases of violence, like police harassment, lynching, statistics, and slave ship manifests, to generate sonic information. So in this presentation of work, Mendi and Keith will be sonifying the New York Police Department stop and frisk records. So that's years, precinct numbers, frequency of stops. And when we asked Mendi and Keith to join us for this, they really explained that this is something that generally happens in a gallery space. So having it on a stage like this is a little bit different. So what we're going to do is get things started, and then at a certain point, the house lights will come up, which is really an invitation for all of you to engage with the work as you see fit. If you want to come a little bit closer, see and try to observe what's going on, or if you want to, go on and join the reception, you're free to do that. But really, that's what we've got. And so I think they're almost set up. And as soon as they're ready, we'll get going. So Mendi and Keith.
Two 003 4 001 165 005 103 006 40 007 151 009 383 010 277 013 193 014 409 017 92 018 167 019 105 020 157 023 379 024 175 025 255 026 212 028 190 030 186 032 148 033 452. 034. 513. 040. 424. 041. 274. 042. 176. 043. 207. 044. 334. 045. 197. 046. 287. 047. 499. 048. 267. 049. 394. 050. 366. 052. 308. 060. 425. 061. 203. 062. 100. 063. 357. 066. 472. 067. 322. 068. 168. 069. 331. 070. 240. 071. 646. 072. 436. 073. 451. 075. 1012. 076. 139. 077. 843. 078. 156. 079. 518. 081. 499. 083. 382. 084. 294. 088. 326. 090. 300. 094. 213. 100. 157. 101. 659. 102. 818. 103. 1356. 104. 172. 105. 305. 106. 148. 107. 478. 108. 537. 109. 1038. 110. 498. 1111. 286. 112. 315. 114. 288. 114. 462. 115. 396. 120. 739. 112. 417. 123. 284. 34. 2004. 1. 001,
190,
005,
301,
006,
343,
007,
321,
009,
438,
010,
629,
013,
194,
014,
892,
017,
54,
018,
156,
019,
3,
020,
613,
023,
992,
024,
378,
025,
580,
026,
326,
028,
541,
030,
879,
032,
351,
033,
773,
034,
614,
040,
867,
041,
678,
042,
533,
043,
430,
044,
405,
045,
249,
046,
633,
047,
546,
048,
635,
049,
482,
050,
599,
052,
505,
060,
397,
061,
769,
062,
649,
063,
425,
066,
635,
067,
2007,
068,
313,
069,
433,
070,
1213,
071,
786,
072,
496,
073,
1015,
075,
2766,
076,
301,
077,
1286,
078,
278,
079,
307,
081,
1191,
083,
746,
084,
77,
088,
433,
090,
421,
094,
319,
100,
488,
101,
1182,
102,
659,
103,
2783,
104,
938,
105,
789,
106,
1253,
107,
660,
108,
663,
109,
461,
110,
555,
111,
342,
112,
494,
113,
591,
114,
419,
115,
1056,
120,
529,
122,
334,
123.
270. 152. 2004. 2.
001.
143.
005.
150.
006.
739.
007.
337.
009.
324.
010.
648.
013.
206.
014.
1357.
017.
26.
018.
148.
019.
334.
020.
419.
023.
996.
024.
248.
025.
616.
026.
501.
028.
262.
030.
1478.
032.
440.
033.
692.
034.
677.
040.
1215.
041.
466.
042.
448.
043.
436.
044.
502.
045.
250.
046.
524.
047.
718.
048.
510.
049.
760.
050.
510.
052.
28.
060.
100.
061.
196.
062.
52.
063.
423.
066.
542.
067.
1611.
068.
97.
069.
300.
070.
272.
071.
275.
072.
211.
073.
2082.
075.
6311.
076.
332.
077.
1970.
078.
239.
079.
717.
081.
1377.
083.
1442.
084.
448.
088.
393.
090.
905.
094.
142.
100.
529.
101.
1261.
102.
993.
103.
4782.
104.
1050.
105.
863.
106.
1574.
107.
701.
108.
1470.
109.
884.
110.
628.
111.
504.
112.
958.
113.
345.
114.
443.
115.
1228,
120,
1026,
122,
591,
123,
208, 105. (2004) 3,
001,
156,
005,
134,
006,
159,
007,
221,
009,
272,
010,
544,
013,
206,
014,
1023,
017,
90,
018,
119,
019,
224,
020,
366,
023,
681,
024,
218,
025,
647,
026,
272,
028,
325,
030,
533,
032,
566,
033,
301,
034,
768,
041,
409,
042,
270,
043,
217,
044,
243,
045,
253,
046,
370,
047,
551,
048,
541,
049,
589,
050,
599,
052,
489,
060,
278,
061,
465,
062,
287,
063,
450,
066,
525,
067,
376,
068,
182,
069,
136,
070,
952,
071,
756,
072,
204,
073,
1105,
075,
3040,
076,
294,
077,
1655,
078,
339,
079,
582,
081,
960,
083,
901,
084,
312,
088,
366,
090,
333,
094,
311,
100,
490,
101,
939,
102,
674,
103,
2701,
104,
1031,
105,
493,
106,
878,
107,
537,
108,
416,
109,
668,
110,
439,
111,
285,
112,
281,
113,
308,
114,
341,
115,
865,
120,
555,
122,
477,
123,
271, 142.